Thank you, Congressman Zinke. And I couldn't see her when you were seated in front here, but I'd also like to recognize the representative from American Samoa who is with us here today, Congresswoman Radigan. It's good to have you here. Obviously, a great deal of interest in that aspect of the jurisdiction coming out of the Interior Department. Congressman, I would like to talk about land management. You and I have had a good deal of conversation about the necessity to manage our lands and manage them well. If confirmed, you're going to be responsible for managing over 245 million surface acres and 700 million acres of subsurface mineral estate. I think we both recognize that's a pretty weighty responsibility. Over 1/5 of it is in my state, and that means your land management efforts have an overwhelming impact on the state of Alaska. We refer to the Secretary of Interior effectively as Alaska's landlord, and you are probably the most consequential member of the administration outside of the president in terms of issues that we work with. So I take this nomination very, very seriously. I've mentioned in my opening statements we have had a number of disagreements and a very difficult relationship at times with this administration. You have acknowledged that each of our states are different. I have walked you through our map and tried to outline why we are unique, why we are bigger and better and broader and faster and more complicated and more challenging than most others. So my question to you very broadly is, how will your approach to management of Alaska's lands be different than what we have seen? How will your recognition of the unique aspects of a state like Alaska be different in these years going forward?
Well, thank you, and thanks for the question. And as you know, as we visited each other, Alaska is different, and I recognize that. As a Navy SEAL, I've spent time in Kodiak, and I've spent time in the Aleutian Chain. I've not spent a lot of time in the interior. But clearly, what's happened is folks in Alaska are upset. They feel like the management, they have no voice. If you're looking at the timber assets along the coast in the southern part of Alaska, those timber assets, forest fires occur, and yet we can't harvest a tree. Inland, your pipeline is down at 40%. And engineering-wise, there's a lot of issues when your pipeline, the backbone of Alaska's energy, is that low. A lot of it, I think, has to do with these cost savings mechanisms that have been put in place. What's occurred is we've taken the field, and we've making those in the field and have taken away the resources and keep on bringing them up to consolidation, layers and layers and layers. A lot of these decisions should be made on the field, in the ground, or on the ground by people that are closest to the problem. And these are people that live in communities. A lot of the BLM managers live in the communities, and they understand the communities have to have a voice. And I do recognize Alaska's different. It needs to be handled different because of the size. And I also understand, and thanks to your maps, that I clearly understand that the private land equity in Alaska is so incredibly small, your resources are incredibly large, and the great people of Alaska need to be a partner in the proper development of those resources.
Well, and we look forward to a partnership, and an even partnership, because when it comes to consultation, when it comes to truly listening to Alaskans, it just feels that we have fallen upon deaf ears. And so a more welcoming dialogue, I think, is what we are anticipating going forward. When we talk about the resources of Alaska and Alaska's willingness to share those resources with the rest of the country and truly the world. One of our great assets is our oil reserves that we have up north. As you mentioned, our Trans-Alaska Pipeline is running 3/4 empty. It now carries about 500,000, a little less than 500,000 barrels a day, and it's not due to lack of resource. It's instead a lack of permission to access those resources. Will you commit to a formal review of all of the Obama administration's actions that took resource-bearing lands and waters in Alaska effectively off the table, including the decisions that specifically prevented the leasing of those lands and those waters for development, and determine whether or not they can be reversed?
Yes, I think the president-elect has said that we want to be energy independent. As a former Navy SEAL, I think I've been to 63 countries in my lifetime, and I can guarantee you it is better to produce energy domestically under reasonable regulation than watch it be produced overseas with no regulation. I've seen the consequences of what happens when you don't have any regulation in the Middle East. We can do it right. The backbone of our environmental policies has been NEPA, and I'm a strong supporter of NEPA. But we also have to understand that we need an economy. And look, if we don't have an economy as a country, then the rest of it doesn't matter, because we're not going to be able to afford a strong military, nor are we going to be able to afford to keep the promises we've made as a great nation. And we've made a lot of promises to education, to our children's future, to infrastructure, to Social Security. All that takes an economy that's moving forward, and energy is a part of that economy. And Alaska is a critical part of that economy. Alaska's different for a reason. You're blessed with great resources, you're blessed with great recreation, a little cold in the winter, but it's not Palm Springs.
You're from Montana. You can handle it.
Where we can handle it. But yes, I think we need to be prudent, and always I think we need to review things to make sure we're doing it right, because over time the government keeps on getting bigger and bigger, the bureaucracy gets larger and larger, and we can't get something done. And I think we do, as a nation, should look at everything with an objective eye to get things done.
Thank you. I will now